juncture. And I mentioned Megiddo for a reason. Not only because it plays a very central role, and I just heard a little bit about it over a quick dinner, but because Megiddo represents not only an intersection of military battle, strategically important militarily, not only an important intersection financially, it was a major crossroads of international trade, but as you all know very well, it represents an ideational intersection in relative to the battle of good and evil. And I think that what's overlooked when we talk about the war in Iran, Rising Lion, the Midnight Hammer, we get caught up in the military aspects of it, and we overlook the fact that this was really a battle against evil, good against evil. Now, I say that right at the outset, because I think we are emerging, I hope we're emerging, from a postmodern era in which not only were good and evil confused, but actually there was an outright denial that there's such a thing as good and evil. This was a product, of course, of some of the key thinkers of the 20th century. Nietzsche proclaimed the death of God, and Heidegger proclaimed the death of man. You cannot proclaim the death of God without proclaiming the death of man. Ultimately, that's what it's going to lead to. Because if man is not created in the image of God, then man, women, humans are not created in the image of God. Then if we're just a collocution of molecules, at the end of the day, they fall apart too. So Heidegger proclaimed the death of humans, the post-human age, and as a result of that, we entered into an age, was advocated by, of course, the French, in which we came into an era of exacerbated relativism, where you can't really say that there's something evil or good. And I think we're starting to emerge from that era now. And I think we're starting to emerge from it because of institutions like this. We'll go back and force you to think of what exactly we're rooted in, where we came from and where we're going. The story of Zion, the story of Israel, presents the most challenging functional entity to that way of thinking. Why? Because when one of the founders of postmodernism, the Frenchman Jean-François Lyotard, was asked what postmodernism is, he says it's an incredulity towards mega-narratives. No mega-narratives. What does mega-narrative mean? What does the incredulity towards mega-narrative mean? What does it mean that when you negate a mega-narrative? Well, of course, you negate religion, right? You deny a biblical vision. Yes. You also deny every ism. You throw out every ism. But with throwing out communism and fascism and liberalism, you also throw out religion, God. And what bigger meta-narrative is there than the functional fulfillment of prophecies that are 3,000 years old? By the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel. There's no bigger meta-narrative. It wasn't supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to happen. Right? There is not a precedent for people exiled from their homeland to remain in existence. You spread to the four corners of the earth. You adopt civilizational norms of wherever you're spread to. You peter out. And by the way, those who challenge Zionism try to challenge that idea by saying we're not the same people as the people of the Bible. There was an anthropologist in the 60s by the name of Professor Arnold Toynbee who tried to claim that. He said we're a fossilized nation, speaking of museums. We're a fossilized nation. Well, we didn't build museums. We didn't build museums. We built synagogues, which we activated throughout the world, in which we faced the direction of Jerusalem and said, may my eyes behold the return to Jerusalem for 2,000 years, no matter where we were. If you were in Yemen, or if you were in Poland, or if you were in North America, you faced Jerusalem 3 times a day. And when you made a blessing over your meal, and when you finished your meal, you talked about building Jerusalem. And when you finished your Seder night, you celebrated the Exodus from Egypt, you said, L'Shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. And when you got married, you broke a glass under the canopy to remember that no home being built in the people of Israel is complete without the home of Jerusalem, without the national home. And when we built a home in Iraq or in Morocco or in Montreal, we left 1.5 by 1.5 unpainted over the doorpost to remember that the house cannot be complete until the house of Jerusalem is reconstituted. So we tricked history, and we made Isaiah come alive when he said that the day would come when we'd come back, by functionally applying that vision. Because if you just have the idea but you don't live with the idea, it's going to peter. You got to live it, right? You can't think about being moral without actually acting moral. It won't help. It'll dissipate over time. Same thing with ideas. If you live the ideas, then they can be maintained. So we have this meta-narrative of the people leaving Egypt, of coming in, of saying, if you don't hold on to land, if you don't behave properly, if you don't listen to the word of God, if you don't listen to the prophets, if you don't follow, something's going to happen bad. There's going to be a breakup in international relations. You know, you're going to have Babylonians come in, and you have the Syrians come in. They're going to destroy. And then the Romans are going to come in. You're going to lose your first temple, you'll just lose your second temple. That's what we're fasting about on this Sunday. We lost the first temple and the second temple on the same day. We lost our sovereignty over Jerusalem on the same day. And the rabbis say, why did that happen on the same day? What was special about that day? And their answer? Their answer is that was the day when the spies, you all remember the passage in Numbers? That was the day when the spies came back after Moses sent them to the promised land and said, come back with the good words. Come back with encouraging words. We need encouraging words. Because why, after all, would he send spies if God told him to go? Well, the reason he sent spies was because he wanted people to come back and say, we could do it. Yeah. We could manage. All right, to teach resiliency. And they came back and they said, well, 10 out of 12. Came back and said, we can't do it. It's too tough, too difficult. Let's choose to stay in the land of in the desert and reject the land of Israel. You know what else they say? They say, look, here in the desert, I noticed the restaurant is called Manna, right? Manna. So here we have man. We have the manna falling from heaven, right? We've got clouds. We've got the daytime cloud, and we've got the fire cloud at night. And we live with miracles, right? God is protecting us. The scorpions and the snakes are removed from our path, and we go through the desert in miracles. We come into the land of Israel. Oh, come on, we've got to create an army and a police force, and we got to collect taxes. And boy, do we know how to collect taxes. And we have to pave the roads and create businesses and finance and a stock market and God. There's left and there's right and there's very religious and irreligious and secular and ultra orthodox. And everything's going to come to peace. Everybody's going to be, and judicial reform against and judicial reform in favor. And, we're going to be fighting with each other. Let's just stay here in the desert and enjoy miracles. And that's the day, the rabbis say, when there was that terrible edict issued that we'd end up staying in the desert. That a whole generation would die out because they rejected the land of Israel. Because when people say to you, oh, I love Jews, I just don't like Zionists. Tell them, don't determine for the Jews what Judaism is, okay? Because Judaism begins with Zion. The very beginning of Judaism is Abraham going on Aliyah. God says to him, you're doing a great job here. You're teaching the people about the existence of a creator. It's great. You're doing a great job. Except I want you to unite that with a land, with a promised land. Okay? So, Lech lecha me'artzecha umimoladetecha. So leave your land and your birthplace and your father's home and go to the land which I will show you. That's the beginning of Judaism. So Zionism didn't begin in the 19th century with Theodor Herzl. Theodor Herzl was able to incorporate Zionism into a political movement because it had already been in existence for 3,500 years. And because nobody gave up on it from the time those temples were destroyed. And faced Jerusalem and broke the glass and left the part of the house unpainted. So we come back to the land of Israel. When nationalisms start to emerge in the 19th century, and Herzl says, there's something new called anti-Semitism. Until now, they've been persecuting the Jews because, for religious reasons, but now there's something new. Now there's something racial. The term anti-Semitism didn't come into existence until the 1860s, 1870s. Because now, after the French Revolution, you couldn't persecute anybody on the basis of religion anymore. So now we were persecuted on the basis of race. And he said the only way to solve the problem is to go back into our roots and to fulfill the dream of the prophets, what we've been waiting for so long, and create the state of Israel. And in doing so, he reconstituted or constituted that meta-narrative. So why is there so much hatred for Israel? Because it epitomizes the end of a postmodern era. Because it challenges the idea that there is no meta-narrative at the root of everything. I'm cutting to the end, right? I'm cutting to the chase. At the end of everything, at the root cause, is because we challenge a civilizational mode declaring that there's no such thing as meta-narratives. And that's very difficult. It's very difficult for the academy that's been brought up, reared, solidified, sated with these ideas of the postmodern era. And Israel says, yes, there is such a thing as a meta-narrative. And if you say there's such a thing as a meta-narrative, you say that there's an arbiter to history. At least that's our meta-narrative. We say there's an arbiter to history. And we say that there's an arbiter to destiny. There's somebody hanging out above. How exactly he operates? Don't know. Trying to figure it out. That's our life effort, to try to figure it out. But along with that meta-narrative is the rejection of this postmodern idea that there's no such thing as good or evil. When I think a lot, my oldest son was my closest friend. He's the first one to call me dad. He was 39 when he was killed. He'd spent 15 years in special ops. He had conducted operations that are still classified to this day. I don't know what he did. I know generally what he did. Hopping out of a helicopter someplace, but he was going after bad guys. Special ops in the Air Force, like your Delta Force. He actually trained with your Delta Force for a while. And at the age of 33, he was sent to the Philippines to ensure that our doctors who were sent there after the earthquake were protected. He was the head of the security detail. And when he saw the doctors pulling people out of the rubble after 5 and 6 days, he had a life transformation. He was in line at the age of 33 to become the commander of our Delta Force. That was the next stop. He came back, and I'll never forget, he said, Dad, I want to have a cup of coffee. We met in Tel Aviv outside the Defense Department. He sat down and he said, listen, I'm going to med school, Dad. I said, Moshe, you're stark raving mad. You're 33 years old. What do you mean you're going to med school now? You got 4 kids. When he was killed, he had 6. But at that time, he had 4. He said, I want to go to med school. I said, what are you going to med school? How are you? I can't support you. No, don't worry. Just give me moral support. Give me your love, Dad. Give me your love. I go, well, why are you doing that? He said, well, look, I just saw doctors pull injured people out of rubble after 6 days. They were listless. They were dead. I see them bring them back to life. I just spent 13 years in special ops. I was doing the other side of the equation. When I see people come back to life, I want to be part of that. So I want to go to med school. And he struggled to get in. You know, he wasn't a straight A student. He could convince you that he was a straight A student, but he really wasn't. And he got into med school, and he struggled through med school, and he finished in August 2023. And he received his white jacket in August at a beautiful ceremony in Ariel University in the heart of Samaria. He was the first medical class in Ariel University. And he was supposed to start his rounds of residency on October 8th. Plan B. Notice, you're all young. Well, most of you. So you don't know this yet. But let me tell you, let me share this with you. Life is plan B. Life is plan B. And life is plan B from the very beginning. I mean, just think about it. If Adam and Eve had a little different attitude about eating, about appetites, we wouldn't all be in plan B, right? So life is plan B. And on October 7th, he's with his little kids in the synagogue. It's Shabbat and it's Simchat Torah, it's the festive of the Torah. And his beeper goes off and he goes racing down, hops in the car and goes racing down, like my son-in-law did, like thousands of other reservists did. They didn't know where they were going. They just heard that something's going on in the south. They got to go help. And this was a people just rising up, really just rising up. Nobody told them to go. They didn't get any orders. Just thousands of people hopped in their cars and went racing to the south. And had they not done that, because we were in such disarray, it was the perfect storm that day, thousands more would have been killed. And who knows if they wouldn't have reached the cities in the south of Beersheba and Kiryat Gat. Thousands hopped in their cars and went racing down. And as he was getting near the city of Sderot, which saw so many people killed, his commanding officer, the general of the Southern Command, called him and said, "Get over here right now. I need you to prepare plans for a counterattack." Because he had done that, and he was very good at that. So he said, "Yeah, but I'm going." No, he said, no. That probably saved his life that day. And he immediately went to the base to organize tank units and personnel carriers and the right kind of units that are, and then they ended up training for 3 weeks. But when I lost them on the end of the second week of the war. It was a Friday afternoon. It was in the northern part of Gaza, Beit Hanun, where he was given an order after 2 weeks of battle. 2 weeks is a very difficult battle. He actually, when the army enters, it's like in a pyramid, right? So the brigade goes in a pyramid form, and he was the lead company. So he basically led the pyramid in, and everybody followed, because he was a brilliant field fox. The 15th day of the war, on a Friday afternoon, just before the portion we read that week, was the portion where Abraham looks for a cave to bury Sarah. Chayei Sarah, the life of Sarah, is the name of the section of the Torah, the Bible, in Genesis. And that's where Abraham is looking for a place to bury Sarah. Ultimately in the cave of the patriarchs in Hebron. So Abraham is looking for a cave to bury Sarah, and Moshe is looking for a tunnel. Friday afternoon, 2 o'clock, he gets the order, takes his troops, and the intel says it's in the mosque of Beit Hanun. They scour the mosque and find no tunnel. And he gets a order on the wireless, step back, move your troops. And he says, no, there's a tunnel here. And he doesn't give up. So he sends in the sniffing dog 3 times. It sits down in the wrong place. There's nothing there. He says, I'm going in by foot. So he goes into the abandoned homes around the mosque, and the second one, the inner room, he discovers the tunnel. And he says, we found the tunnel, Shabbat Shalom. Wishing everybody, it was 3:21. What we didn't know was that Hamas had a hidden camera, followed him in. They were in the tunnel. And as soon as he said Shabbat Shalom, they set it off. It was a massive explosion. So it blew his legs and those of his immediate command team, 3 other soldiers who were next to him, blew their legs off and knocked the walls out. So the ceiling fell down. So they didn't have a chance. And the 5 soldiers on the other side of the wall in his command team lost their legs. But thank God they're alive today. So I spend my life after I got that knock on the door thinking about the meaning of his life and his death. I know who he was, what his values were. And it is clear to me that he was battling, and his colleagues were battling, and we continue to battle pure evil. People who massacre, who slaughter men, women, and children, defenseless people, and say they'll do it again. The same people right now who are throwing grenades at their own people as they wait in line hungry for food so that they can point the finger at Israel and say it's Israeli shooting. I know what our orders are. Think anybody in their right mind in Israel gives an order to shoot at innocent people waiting in line for food? But like contagion, it runs through the media. Picture on the front page of the New York Times, we're starving people. There's only one little problem. That picture of Muhammad on the front page of the New York Times last week wasn't from malnutrition. He's suffering from cerebral palsy. The cruel, cynical use. And don't think that it was an accident, because we have the picture. Muhammad's brother was standing next to him. He's a healthy kid. So is Israel so expert at starving one member of the family while feeding the other member of the family? There are people hungry in Gaza. Let me assure you, there are people hungry in Gaza. But we're not keeping them hungry. There are trucks lying. I wish. You're coming soon to Israel, right? Passages is coming. I hope Passages takes you to the intersection leading into Gaza. And you'll see truckloads. Right now there's 630. Waiting for UN agencies to take them in. We facilitate the entrance of humanitarian aid into Gaza. We can't distribute. It's a war zone. Do you think our soldiers can go in and actually distribute food? We'd be shot dead. It's not expected of any army in the world. So everybody's got everything mixed up. UN agencies are responsible for the distribution of food, like they do everywhere in every conflict zone in the world. What we have to do is facilitate that. But what was happening for a year, and I'm going to come back to Iran, don't worry, I'm going to get back to the battle against Iran, right? But I'm talking about what my son was battling here for a moment. And because it's right now on the edge of everybody's tongue and in everybody's mind and in the front page of all the newspapers and legacy media. Right? So, UN agencies, who in many cases do God's work, humanitarian work, are responsible for bringing all of this aid in. Now tell me something. What do you think? You bring a semi-trailer in to an area that's under the control of Hamas. Funding for Hamas has been cut off because we control the Philadelphia corridor. That's the southern tip, the border with Egypt. So they can't get weapons or money in anymore. What is Hamas going to do to reconstitute itself? The first thing they're going to do is take the food for themselves. Now, do you really think that some altruistic do-gooder from Wichita, who's now working for one of these organizations because they really care for people, is not going to be intimidated by a guy with a mask in Gaza holding a Kalashnikov rifle? Well, of course they're going to be intimidated. So we said to the UN agencies, you have to come up with a mechanism whereby Hamas won't get this food. Because if Hamas is responsible for getting the humanitarian aid, first of all, we're going to prolong the war. Because they're going to be the first ones to get the aid. They're the first ones to eat. Secondly, they're going to sell this food at inflated prices. Just yesterday, there were pictures of malnourished babies. Do you know what a container of baby formula goes for in the Gaza market right now? 450 shekel. The same baby formula is sold in Tel Aviv for 70 shekel. Right? 6-7 times the price. Who's getting that money? Now think about think about what's going on here. That's like an entire rape of the system. You've got people, good people here. Maybe you, maybe your parents, maybe your cousins. Donate money to an NGO to help people that are hungry. Hamas gets it and then makes a profit. What kind of racket is that? If people really knew what was going on, would they allow this insanity to continue? But I'll tell you, we let it continue for months and months and months until the people of Israel got fed up. You know why? Because they said to the government, what the hell are you doing? We're sending our sons and daughters to defeat Hamas, and with the other hand, we're feeding them the same people shooting at our sons and daughters. You've got to stop this nonsense. So we looked for a mechanism, and we appealed to a U.S. pastor by the name of Johnny Moore. And we said, Johnny, take hold of this organization that we've created called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So we can establish distribution sites of humanitarian aid in a fashion in which it doesn't get to Hamas. It goes straight to the people. We established 4 of them. We plan to establish another 4 in areas where Hamas is not dominant. And what happened? Everybody attacked them. Everybody attacked the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Everybody said, what are you doing? You're not allowing the UN to function anymore. And it doesn't work. Well, first of all, it works. Pastor Paula White was just there yesterday. She sent pictures around to all of her colleagues. She said, I'm here. It's working unbelievably. It's working so well that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation even established separate hours so women and children can come along to feel more comfortable. Because religious Muslim women were not feeling comfortable waiting in line, pressed together with men. So they created separate hours for the Muslim women. Right? Was it off to a rocky start? Sure it was, like anything new in an area plagued by war. But it's working. The response of the UN and the supporters of these organizations is we're not going to take the trucks in. So Friday, we had an emergency call. Saturday morning, an emergency meeting. That was my Shabbat, emergency meeting with the cabinet in Israel. And I said to the prime minister and all the ministers, I said, look, it doesn't matter what the facts are anymore. There's a tsunami out there and we're being accused of the worst kind of crimes. Okay, we have to do something immediately. So we opened up corridors. We stopped fighting in 5 different corridors, so the UN would not have any excuse. We turned to the Emirati colleagues of ours as a result of the Abraham Accords, which I'll talk about in a minute too. I told you this is all going to be on one foot. And we said, in addition to the corridors, we're going to parachute food in. The Emiratis have been great partners in helping us do this. And it's a problem when you parachute food in because they're very heavy. The pallets are very big and very heavy. And if you're not careful, if the pilots aren't careful, the people can gather around underneath, not anticipating that the pallets come down very quickly and they could be crushed. So there were those in the army who opposed it. They said, look, this may be very problematic. And the prime minister said, find areas where they can be dropped before the people can assemble, because we have to get as much as possible in. So the hunger you see is not caused by Israel. This is no different than saying that we use blood in our matzahs before Passover. They're not distributing the food equally. Hamas gets the food. And here's the zinger. So I'm on the Hill about 2 months ago. I'm meeting with 5 senators who are of the most anti-Israel streak in the Senate. They voted for arms embargo against us. But I talk to everyone. They asked for a meeting. I said, I'm here. They said, what's the problem with the UN agencies? I said, well, 90% is diverted to Hamas. Are you in favor of that? And they said, come on, it's not 90%. I said, no, it is. We have pretty good intel. This, of course, was before Rising Lion in Iran, right? So I couldn't actually bring hard proof that we have good intel. I don't think anybody doubts our intel right now, right? We'll get back to that, as I said. I said, that's our intel. 90% is going to Hamas. He said, no, you're exaggerating. It's only 10%. I said, senators, do you hear what you're saying? Are you really willing to have 10% of the hundreds of millions of dollars going to Hamas? He said, well, it's only 10%. That's the price we have to pay. I said, okay. This week we discovered that the United Nations has a website. And one of my researchers found that they track the distribution of food. And somebody there, obviously, probably is fired by now, put the figures down. And from the 19th, and these are the figures, we didn't go back into the history of the whole thing, but this is enough. And you're all invited to go into UNOPS and look at the numbers. There's offloaded trucks, and then there's trucks arrived. So offloaded trucks from the 19th of May to the 28th of July, 2,134. Arrived, 260. I said, by my math, that's 10%. I mean, we were so accurate, it was really caught me by surprise. Okay? So, Hamas is getting the food and Hamas is holding it up. That's evil. That's evil. There's nothing more evil than that. You can't even claim that the massacre of Jews on October 7th was just for what? What is the massacre of your own Gazans for? You're dealing with a death cult. And I implore you to read the literature of the Muslim Brotherhood. Understand what we're up against. And here I'm going to open parentheses for a moment to help you understand really what the war in Iran was about. How long did it take for a reformation in Christianity? 1,500 years. When was the Islamic Reformation? Hasn't happened yet. It's happening now. Professor Bernard Lewis, who was the Dayan of Middle East experts, the leading expert in the world on Islam, used to say, remember, folks, Islam has not yet had a reformation. And what is the essence of a reformation in Islam? Is the willingness to give up on the idea of ruling the world in a caliphate and accommodating Judeo-Christian civilization. What is the best example of accommodating the Judeo-Christian civilization? Living in peace with Israel. So the Abraham Accords were a manifestation of an accommodationist attitude within Islam, where we can live side by side in Islamic civilization with a Judeo-Christian civilization. And as soon as the counter-reformers saw this actually happening, they said, we've got to stop this. The way to stop reformation within Islam is to destroy Israel. That's the first step. So the battle really that's taking place is a battle within Islam, is a really hard-fought theological battle. And this is how Shiite extremists and Sunni extremists, the Shiite of Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood of the Sunni, can come together, because first we destroy the infidels. First we destroy Judeo-Christian civilization. Then we fight it out amongst ourselves. When Iran says we intend to annihilate Israel, and they used to call us a one-bomb country. Very complimentary, right? You guys are more complicated. It takes a number of bombs. We're just a one-bomb country. You know, wear it with pride. Look, when somebody says to you they're going to kill you, believe them. There's an awful lot of talk about the Holocaust, right? You've got Holocaust legislation, Holocaust history, Holocaust tours, Holocaust museums. Sometimes I tell my co-religionists, you lose the main lesson of the Holocaust. The main lesson of the Holocaust is very simple. When somebody writes and speaks and works towards annihilating you, believe him. That's all. It's very simple. Believe him. Because the alternative could be much worse than believing him. Iran is committed to this idea of a nuclear bomb, a nuclear weapon. And it's not only to annihilate Israel. It's in order to achieve ascendancy in this battle between moderation and extremism, between reformation and counter-reformation. That's what the bomb's intended for, ladies and gentlemen. To destroy this very idea that Western civilization could live alongside Islamic civilization. And we're at the spearhead of that issue. Now, some people have said, and I know you've got some podcasters here in the U.S., that make a living out of looking for anything that's anti-Israel. It's amazing how they're like there's no other agenda. It's like every 2 or 3 days, you've got somebody being interviewed who discovered that actually the Jews are demons. Again and again and again, and you wonder, like, you're a smart guy. Have you no other agenda? I mean, that's all you can find? It's a few, not too many, but they're out there and they're rather popular. Also, by the way, claim that the Jews aren't the same people of the Bible. That also has been featured in some of these podcasts. But what Iran intended to do, and we saw this in the intel, was to race very quickly towards a nuclear weapon. So we came to the president in February. The first foreign dignitary to be welcomed by the president of the United States was Prime Minister Netanyahu. It's also, by the way, part of the Jewish conspiracy. And part of that conspiracy is that we schlepped the president. We dragged the president into war. You've heard that, right? We've dragged the president into war. So President Trump is somebody that's very easy to drag, right? And he's like a draggable kind of guy. Right? He just doesn't put up a fight. Mr. Schlepper. He's Schlepper. He schlepped. What we did was, I think, the most respectable thing imaginable. We came in and we said, Mr. President, we have 4 options. We can't wait because this is existential for us. We can do it ourselves, and these can be the ramifications. We could do it with minor support from you, and these are the ramifications and the potentialities. We can do it with a lot of support, option 3, with a lot of backing from you, and these are the potential ramifications. And 4, you can lead the way. Whatever you choose, we're comfortable with. That's what we said. The only ask we had from the United States, were defensive missile systems. The THAAD missiles and the Aegis missiles, to keep these ballistic missiles out from our population centers. Now, you just need to appreciate what a ballistic missile is. Imagine a semi-trailer that you see on the highway, packed with explosives, careening through the sky 4 times the speed of sound. When they hit, they do half the damage of a small nuclear bomb. We saw what they did. One ballistic missile that hit in Rehovot damaged 6 blocks on 6 blocks. It was a tremendous amount of damage. So you saved thousands of lives, and we're indebted to the administration, to Congress, to the American people for providing us with those THAADs and Aegis, which worked alongside with our missile defense systems, our David Sling, and our Arrow system, which we developed together. And the president decided over the course of several months to come in somewhere between the second and third option. That America would be involved to make sure that the job was done. It was a very calculated, careful, and determined decision. It was really statesmanship in the works. And it was wonderful for me as somebody who's a political theorist to watch how decisions were made. This is going to be studied, by the way, years from now, how decisions are made in politics. And with all the, grunts and laughs about the president's tweets and some of his expressions, he took this decision in a really historic method of carefully calculating the potentials of each option and made his decision in the best interest of the United States and the world. When Iran is defanged, when that counter-reformation ideology is degraded, the ability for moderation rises, because the moderate states are then less intimidated by a rising nuclear Iran. So the possibility now for us to go into Abraham Accords 2.0 has increased dramatically. And I can't go into detail. If I went into detail, you'd say to me, Ambassador, why are you so stupid? Why would you talk about that now? Because you're endangering the possibility of it actually happening. You know how many people knew about the Abraham Accords before they were signed? In our government? 5 people. Maybe there's an argument about the 5th, whether or not he was eavesdropping. But there were 3 or 4 people that knew about it. That's it. And that's why it was successful. How many people knew about our planning prior to Rising Lion and Midnight Hammer? Very few. And the reason why it was successful is because it didn't leak. Okay? Because it didn't leak. And now we have the possibility to move into an era where Iran and its proxies have been degraded to a point where more and more moderation will be possible in the Islamic world. That is a blessing. And because we're people that reject the idea of the immediate and the now, and we could postpone satisfaction a little bit, so we can understand that right now we're going through a difficult period. If you think for one moment that this campaign of starvation and hunger and the Jews are guilty again is not organized and paid for, and you're mistaken. It's coming from somewhere. This is a well-calibrated, well-funded, well-organized campaign. We have a couple ideas where it's coming from. We have no proof at the moment. The proof will probably come to the surface over the next few months and years. But this is a well-organized campaign. We're going to get beyond it. We're going to get beyond it because the bond that exists between Israel and Western civilization won't be broken. Even if we have, some morally confused people like the Prime Minister of Great Britain. Great Britain is telling us how to conduct a war. I mean, is there anything more precious than that? In 48 hours, Great Britain killed 25,000 people in Dresden. They targeted civilians. When did Great Britain ever apologize for bombing the hell out of Dresden and killing 25,000 people? We don't kill innocent civilians. We don't target innocent civilians. Our soldiers died because we don't target innocent civilians. My son might be alive today if we targeted innocent civilians, because we'd strafe bomb population centers instead of sending our soldiers in by foot. My son went in by foot looking for terrorists so we can avoid bombing civilian population centers. And he's going to dictate to us, he's going to create a Palestinian state. Call out and say this is moral depravity. Prime Minister of Canada, what is going on in your mind? Oh, and of course, Emmanuel Macron, of course, the President of France, the beacon of morality and sanity. France, who gave us Michel Foucault, the father of postmodernism, who taught us that everything that's tradition must be broken, and everything that is good is evil, and everything that's evil is good, who tested the the extremes in every aspect of life, who corrupted generations. So yes, there is truth. There is objective truth. There is objective morality. There is objective good. We're fighting the battle. It's that Megiddo battle. It's that intersection where everybody's got to decide what side they're on. They're standing up on the side of evil, or at least kowtowing to it, announcing a unilateral recognition of a Palestine state when the Hamas is holding on to hostages underground for almost 2 years? Now, that's not moral confusion, that's moral depravity. And I'll tell you something. Our intel, remember the intel? It's pretty good. Beepers, remember the beepers? Remember the first night in Tehran, where in 90 seconds the entire leadership of the IRGC was taken out? Tehran, where we built a drone factory. We built a drone factory in the middle of Tehran. Our intel shows that every time the Europeans make a statement in favor of a Palestine state, Hamas hardens its position in negotiations and is more and more insistent on not releasing our hostages. Direct relationship. It's astounding. And we've conveyed this. We've said, wait, prolong your satisfaction. Delay your satisfaction for the state of Palestine, which we've been trying to do for 30 years. But every time we move in that direction, we get terrorism. That's why we're a little bit more hesitant about doing it now. So the most important thing I could say is come visit and educate yourself. There's no better way of educating yourself than to walk the Holy Land. And you don't need to buy a special tour book. Just take the Bible in hand and walk from place to place. Get to know the people that live there now, and get to know the people that lived there once upon a time, who knew that we're going to come back. Identify with the values that the creators of Judaism and Christianity foresaw, held high, held holy, held dear. We've gotten beyond most of our troubled history. We're not living in the Middle Ages anymore. We're in a period of reconciliation, and that has to be brought to the fore and set an example for so many people. We're not there yet, particularly our Muslim brothers and sisters. So we've done it, and now we've got to show them that it could be done. That's what we're trying to do. It's a long passage, but it's a long road best taken. So I'll just close with one biblical idea, and then if I haven't overstayed my welcome, I'll be happy to entertain some questions. And here's my biblical idea. So I'm asked very often about resiliency. As a matter of fact, over dinner, Steve mentioned, he said, people are so resilient in Israel. We were just there, and after everything we experienced, people are still so resilient. Where does this resiliency come from? So here I take you back to the beginning of Deuteronomy, which we read this Shabbat. Okay? In 2 days, Saturday morning, in all synagogues around the world, we're going to read the beginning of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy begins, Ele hadvarim asher diber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe spoke. And everybody goes right to what he spoke. Because, simple, these are the words that Moshe spoke. What is the significance of that? But we know that there's significance in every word. We should stop for a minute and think about that. These are the words that Moshe spoke? Moses. These are the words that Moses spoke? That's surprising, isn't it? It's not the words that God spoke, it's the words that Moses spoke that God signed on to. But Moses speaking? You remember our first meeting with Moses? He's at the burning bush. And God says to him, look, I've got a mission for you. And the mission is, let my people go. Go back to Pharaoh and say, there's right and wrong, there's good and evil, and slavery is evil. Let my people go. And Moses says what? Moses says, can't do it. I have a speech impediment. I'm impaired. I'm disabled. I'm a victim. And God basically says to Moses, in a very long, fascinating conversation that I encourage you to study, God says to him, basically, at the end of the day, he says to him, get over it. Doesn't accept Moses' disability. He refuses to accept disability. Now let me ask you a question. That's Exodus. Deuteronomy begins with the words that he spoke. What happens in Numbers with the rock? Remember? He's told to speak to the rock. Why can't Moses enter the land of Israel, which is the continuation of Deuteronomy? Right? He pleads, he says, I plead to you, God, I pleaded to God, let me go into the land. I want to go into the land. I mean, think about that. 120 years, the guy's 120 his whole life. I mean, he's leading the people out of slavery to get into the land. This is his life work. The only thing he really wants to do is go into the land. And God says, no, you can see it from afar, but you can't actually go in. And he pleads with God, says, let me in. And when is it decided that he can't go in? When he hits the rock. So what does hitting the rock have to do with not being allowed to go into the land of Israel? Good question? I think so. The question occupied my mind since I remember myself, maybe from the bar mitzvah, which is about 3 or 4 years ago. I've been thinking about this for years. What does one thing have to do with the other? Everybody all the commentaries deal with the severity of it, right? Why was it such a terrible iniquity to hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock? That's where all the commentaries are. And it never really satisfied me because the punishment is, usually a punishment is commensurate with the crime, right? What does not entering the land have to do with hitting the rock? So here's my take on it. God is telling Moses, you are the leader of the Jewish people. If you don't get over your disability, the people will never be able to survive and re-enter the land. If you get caught up in victimhood and claim the mantle of victimhood and disability and difficulty, you're never going to get over it. You're never going to get over the persecutions. You're never going to get over the Holocaust. You're never going to go back to the land of Israel. You won't be able to fulfill those prophecies. Only if you get over your disability will you be able to fulfill that. You have to set an example. So you've got to get over your speech impediment. You've got to get over the claim of disability. You've got to get over saying, I can't do what you're asking me to do because I've got an impediment. I can't do my calling. I can't fulfill my calling because I have an impediment. And God says to him, you overcome your calling because you're setting an example for a people that has to overcome the calling. And the calling is to exist, and the calling is to maintain survival and come back to the land. Because you hit the rock instead of speaking the rock, that was his disability. It was a sign that he wasn't getting over it. And if he would have been allowed to go into the land, the people would have said, I can not get over my disability and still succeed in my calling. God says no. To succeed, you've got to get over your disability. You can't claim victimhood. So from a status at the burning bush, where he says, I can't do my calling because I'm impaired, the book of Deuteronomy begins, these are the words that Moses spoke. He got over his disability. It's a sign, I think, for each and every one of us to get over our disabilities as individuals, never to claim victimhood for ourselves or for our people, for our nation, but to identify our calling and to move on it. I think that's what we're trying to do in the modern state of Israel. So thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm humbled. Thank you.
So we have a few questions from participants. So we'll be running the mic to them to ask them some questions. Thank you.
Hi, is this on? Hi. My name is Juliana. I'm a Passages alumni. First of all, thank you so much for coming.
Julia?
Juliana.
Julia.
Juliana.
Juliana, I'm sorry.
There you go. It's okay.
Can you just tell me where you're from?
Columbus, Ohio.
Thank you.
So our first question is, how important is the Christian community and its support for Israel in the U.S.?
So what would be the term beyond very, extremely, hugely? I mean, it's important really for two reasons. It's important because, you know, if I just be politically blunt, I mean, you're huge, right? You're important. And you see some of the issues that tear apart America, where Christianity comes in, where Christians come in and make a statement. Say, well, Christianity weighs in here, right? So you weigh in on important issues, and it makes a difference. You make a difference in the electorate, you make a difference in policy. So in a very practical sense, you make a difference for Israel. But I think it's much deeper than that. I talked before about the civilizational issue. And I think that when we stand together, and I understand that sometimes it's difficult, right? When, you know, they're difficult. We can talk about that, you know, and without a microphone and over a cup of Cola Zero or something. But for the most part, there's no reason why we shouldn't be on the same page. And we're representing something that runs deep, a shared set of values. And I think that that's terribly important for us to embrace and project. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Caitlin, and I'm from California. And first of all, I just want to
We're in California. That's one big place.
very northern, so on the coast, about 2 hours south of the Oregon border.
Thank you.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for being here with us tonight. Your talk was very interesting and informative.
Thank you.
And I learned a lot, and we're just so honored to have you with us.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So my question is, what needs to be done on American university campuses to ensure Jewish and pro-Israel supporters are not attacked and harassed?
Well, first of all, I got to tell you, I've got a great friend in the administration by the name of Attorney Leo Terrell. And I got to tell you, if everybody in the administration pursues the goals the way Leo Terrell does, there's going to be no more anti-Semitism in America, because, I mean, he is just doing an incredible job. And I know he's representing the president, the vice president on this. And I think they're committed in a way to uprooting what we saw in so many campuses across the United States. And I think that there's something else here as well. I think there was a bubble that was burst in the image that if you didn't go to one of the star-spangled elite universities, that you weren't really educated, or you really couldn't make it you know. So I think that's not that I'm suggesting that, you know, we talk down Ivy League universities, but there was a virus going through. I mean, there was something very wrong happening. I wish I had more time to go into it, where this all came from, but it has a lot to do with how I began my remarks. There's a postmodern impulse that has taken over the academy in a way that when I talk about changes happening in society, they haven't gotten yet to the university. The universities that are supposed to be the most progressive in terms of ideas of recognizing trends in society and changing ideas, they're like way in the back. I mean, they're still stuck in the 1960s, okay? And the reason why, again, why Israel became such a focus is because of the challenge that it presents to the ideas of Michel Foucault, to the ideas of the postmodernists who were embraced. For example, you know, talk about the epicenter, talk about Columbia, okay? Who was it that wedded this postmodern idea, the end of meta-narratives, and there's no objective truth, and there's no objective narrative, there's no objective history? It was Edward Said. Edward Said was a student of Michel Foucault, and he quotes Michel Foucault more than anybody else in his Sick book, which is taken apart by every expert. He was an expert on English literature, and he wrote a book about the Orient, and about race, and about history. And one of the crazy things that he says there, this is just, you know, it's mind-boggling because I study Said. He says, narratives are created by the powerful. There's no real objective truth. The truth as we see it is all a matter of power, right? So, since there's no truth, we will create our own narrative. We create our own truth. And he said that's how we have to fight the Palestinian cause. By creating this novel idea of Palestinian indigeneity. It's there. He says the same way the British left Nigeria, the French left Algeria, now the Jews have to leave Palestine. Except Edward Said, the term Palestine came into existence, you know when?
Nero.
136, after the suppression of the Jewish insurrection of Bar Kokhba against the Roman occupation. It was suppressed, our insurrection. So the Romans said, damn it, these Jews put up a fight for 3 years. We have to separate the land of Israel from the people of Israel as we send them into exile. Exile actually began not with the destruction of the Second Temple, but with the suppression of the Bar Kokhba rebellion in 135. So the Romans had this great idea. They said, we'll separate the people from the land by calling the land something else. They looked back in history and said, there were Philistines here once, who the Jews fought, kept out. Right? So we'll put on the coins we print that year, Palestine. Okay, that's when it was created. But we were here 2,000 years. Abraham was there 2,000 years beforehand. And I'm not going to make an apology for it. I will not apologize for that. Okay, we're indigenous. Now we're willing to share. We've always wanted to share. Every time somebody has come and said, divide the land, we've said, okay, they've said no. We say, okay, they say no. The land keeps getting chopped up. Now they want us to chop it again. You know what the land was, Mr. Starmer, Mr. Macron, before 1967? I would say to them, you go live in a state that's 9 miles wide. I drove here from the Israeli embassy. I think it's considerably more than 9 miles. It at least took more than 9 minutes. We weren't doing 60, but it's about that. That's the width of the state of Israel. Do you know that, ladies and gentlemen? That's the width of the state of Israel prior to 1967. And that we accepted in 1948. We said, okay, we'll live in that, just for the sake of peace. And they said no. Oh, everybody says, you'll hear this a lot. People will say we're the size of New Jersey. We are, in terms of square miles, the size of New Jersey. There's just one big difference. New Jersey is a hamburger. We're a hot dog. You can cut us in half very easily, right like this. That's the reason why Ben Gurion, the first prime minister, created 2 ports, Haifa and Ashdod. Because he said in our soft belly, in Netanya, they'll cut us off in the middle. And we'll be left without a way to get out. They come to annihilate us. We need a way to get out. We need one port, right? So we divide. He said 2 ports. They're pretty close together. Why would we have 2 ports? Well, because they can divide the country. Because we're a country 9 miles wide. And do you know how big we are? They talk about, you heard the term Greater Israel? How many times have you heard the term Greater Israel? Right? You've heard the term Greater Israel. You know what Greater Israel is? Oh, it's huge. 40 miles wide. With Judea and Samaria. Between the college campuses, they said, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Right? The river to the sea means annihilate the Jewish state, annihilationist. The first thing you can do to stop the violence against Jews and supporters on campus is to first of all, tell the truth. From the river to the sea is an annihilationist call. It's a call to murder. And if you need any proof to that, my 2 employees, my 2 friends, the 2 people who I saw every day at work, these 2 beautiful kids, Yaron and Sarah, who are about to be engaged, right? Who lit up our embassy with their smile, with their compassion, with their passion, gunned down simply because they work in an Israeli embassy, right? Yaron wasn't Jewish. Yaron's Christian. They didn't care. They were about to be married. Sarah comes from a nice Jewish family out in Kansas. Yaron comes from a family that moved from Germany to Jerusalem in a Christian community. They're about to be married. Gunned down, shot dead. And what was he screaming, the murderer? From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And what is the river to the sea? 40 miles. A grand 40 miles is Greater Israel. And what are the territories we're talking about? The territories that are where the prophets roamed. Bethel and Shiloh and Jerusalem and Bethlehem and Hebron. Right? So that we just turn around and to become a Palestinian state because Macron has a 15% constituency of Muslims? Really? Now, respect your Muslim populations. I'm all for it. But don't tell me to reduce myself to 9 miles and give up what is historically mine because you have a constituency problem in Edgeware, Mr. Starmer. Because you allowed Edgeware to turn into Baghdad is not my problem. Deal with it. Don't take it out on the Jews. We've been doing that for a long time. We're kind of sick and tired of it. Yeah. Anybody else? Sure.
Thank you for coming. My name is Joel. I am a Passages alum, and I'm also a pastor from Port Huron, Michigan.
I'm sorry, where in Michigan?
Port Huron, Michigan. It's about an hour north of Detroit. I look forward to finding and reading your postdoc on John Locke and the Bible. Probably weren't expecting that.
No, I really appreciate that. There's only one problem. You know these academic books, when they sell on Amazon?
$300.
It's like, well, I'll give you a bargain. It's about $140. You have to take out a loan, to buy these academic books. But that's in a few libraries. But other than that, it made me happy for a while, so that's okay.
So I want to ask, what is the most important thing you hope to accomplish as ambassador? And could you also give like a short-term one and a long-term?
Yeah. So I get asked that question sometimes, and the first thing is, it's hard to see when you're in the, what do you call it in battle, the tunnels, you're in the battle, the trenches, thank you. You're in the trenches. Sometimes we're in the trenches. It's hard to see up in the distance. And we're in the trenches right now because it's been brutal over the past few weeks. I always go out of Washington for Shabbat. And what I try to do is go to a city and begin on a Thursday evening, like with local media, university campus. I love sitting with students. I would like to extend an invitation for you all to extend an invitation to me to visit your communities, your churches, your universities, wherever you may be. I get out of Washington as often as I can. And then I go on Fridays to the local federation, to a church, wherever I'm invited to speak. And over the Shabbat, I go to different synagogues, all the denominations. I'm more welcome in some than in others, but I try to go everywhere. And then on Sunday, I like to do at least 2 churches if I can. And so that's one of my goals, is to reach out and see as much of America as I can as ambassador. I didn't do cross country when I was growing up here in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I left when I was 18, and I did a lot of camping around Lake Wallenpaupack, if those of you who know, but Honesdale. But there's a lot of America I haven't seen. So I'd like very much to touch as many people as I can, and I'd like to expose as many people as I can to the Israel of today. That's a goal, to get out of Washington. The second goal is to make Israel as bipartisan as possible. And let me tell you, it's not going so well. It's very difficult right now. It's a very partisan atmosphere in Washington. And I'm doing my best. And I go to visit with congressmen and senators that have been very hostile to Israel since the war began. But I want to engage everyone. And particularly now, under this really this broad-based attack on our very morality, and these accusations of hunger and starvation and so forth, holding us responsible as we conduct a war against a ghoulish enemy. It's difficult, but I'm not giving up on the agenda. And on a very personal level, there are technical things. I'd like to see more people. I'd like to see more people visit. I'd like to see the numbers rise after we have a ceasefire and the war in Gaza is over. We can go back to massive tourism. I'd love to see, many more people come, because it's a life-transforming experience. It really is a passage into a different age. It's a passage into a different life. You really experience something. Everybody who I've spoken to, and I've done this for many years with different hats. Think tank, business, government. I've done it all. On a very personal level, I'm living for my son, because you make you have to make a decision when you lose somebody you love so much, that you either go on living or you get pulled down. You start feeling a victim, right? And I guess maybe I could legitimately feel victimhood, because I had other plans. I mean, I thought I was going to go into old age and have my firstborn tend to my needs, and that's not going to be the case. And I'm going back to Israel soon for the High Holy Days, and his oldest son is getting bar mitzvah. And I don't know how to, I'm thinking about how am I going to do over that Shabbat? Where I've got to kind of be his grandfather and father at the same time. I'm kind of new at that. So I live, in a sense, my choice in life is to, right now, and I hope I can maintain it, and everything I do, everything I say, and every decision I take is to live for him. And whenever I'm tired, I feel him sneak up behind me. They give me a good swift kick. He was, I was always encouraging him not to do so much. I was always telling him, you're doing too much. When he was in med school, he was doing 80 days of reserve duty a year. He started a program to induct ultra-Orthodox men into an intelligence unit. There's a whole issue in Israel about the ultra-Orthodox not serving. So he didn't whine or complain. He just ran an operation which inducted them, got them to go into service. And he took the program from 82 in the first year to 350 the third year, and it's fantastically successful now. And he did it because he could sit with anybody. He could train with the Delta Force and feel at home, and they feel at home with him. That's just who he was. He was just, he can sit with the ultra-Orthodox, and he can sit with the kibbutzniks, where he did most of his service. They would love him, he would love them. So I got to try to live for him as well, because his life on this earth is missing. So I hope to accomplish that. I hope to be able to accomplish that, to stick with it, and to go back and say, I spent X amount of time being Israel's ambassador to the United States. And Moshe was with me. One last question for, thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, firstly, Ambassador, Shalom,
Shalom.
Ahava,
Ahava.
Simcha.
Simcha. And just, you are?
Yes, so I am Minister Emmanuel Stokes from the city of Tallahassee, Florida.
Tallahassee. Thank you.
And foremost, if I can, it's a tip-in to what you have stated. But I had to state this because it has beckoned in my soul to address what you have stated so far. And this is the stipulation. Could it be that you could think, or any of us, that God is saying, or could be stating, that compassion is far better than sacrifice? And the stipulation is this. When I look at all that my family and that my ancestors and that all of our ancestors have had to go through, stipulating what we have endured in this here United States of America, let alone all the countries of the world. And I look at that, and to the comments that you've stated, respectfully, quote, let my people go, unquote, or, quote, slavery is evil, unquote. And when I think about those comments, even to the degree of what I've seen slavery in this here United States of America for over 400 years, and when I look at what Israel has had to endure in Egypt for over 400 years, and when I look at all other situations, whether we can talk about Haiti, or whether we can talk about Venezuela, or other situations around the globe that happen to endure hardship just on the sake of humanity, no other bearing. When I look at that, and then when I look at the indicators, such as the Ashkenazi versus the Sephardic Jews, and how there's a difference between the two, but even in the difference, there is a fulfillment of the law. And so I leave you with this, but with that same question, if I can, pardon me for the time difference or the time differential, but when I say this with all due essence of my father and my mother and my heavenly Father, Abba, and all that is given through Christ. And that is this. In Genesis chapter 17, verses 18 through 22, it states that Abraham said unto God, O that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah, thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, the other son, he says, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and he will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. To Ishmael, the other son. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, with Sarah, which she shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and God went up, from the essence of Abraham. So the whole essence of why I say that, just to conclude, is partly because when I look at what is happening in Gaza, when I study what is happening between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, or Bibi, and when I look at what is happening with President Trump or any of the other cabinet members and so forth, even as respectfully yourself and what you do, which I am very grateful, I'm stating this out of the heart of the issue. If it's a matter of compassion, not sacrifice, liken unto Christ, who said, love thy enemies, and to do them no harm. And he himself didn't kill anyone. So when I see that, and he was crucified on the cross for the repentance and for the remorse of sin, how could I say, in closing, that when I look at this matter, and when I look at serving my family, as you mentioned about your son and other members of the ward, so to speak, but when you look into it, the moral depravity you mentioned, what, Ambassador, respectfully, could we say if the issue truly is simpler than perhaps what our eyes have seen? Could it be a matter of compassion, speaking from all the history that all of us have endured, whether you're Jew or Gentile? Could it be something that is simply a matter of compassion rather than sacrifice? Thank you, sir.
I'm not sure I wholly understand the depth of your question. I will just say a word about compassion, because it seems to be the thrust of your remarks and question. And I think that what you're asking for is how we can relate compassion to the current crisis. And I think that it would be wonderful if we could avoid war altogether. And if compassion can be demonstrated just through love, you said ahava, and simcha, which is joy, sharing each other's time, the dignity of difference, finding compassion in that dignity, there's a little bit of a problem if you don't recognize the fact, not you, say if one doesn't recognize the fact, that there can be those who are fundamentally opposed to compassion. And sometimes compassion, as Moses taught us when he slew the Egyptian who was raping a slave's wife, beating him. What was the compassionate thing to do there? What is the compassionate thing for Israel to do after they came across the border and decapitated men, cut off the breasts of women as they were raping them? As they decapitated babies, threw them in ovens?
What do you do?
If you show compassion to murderers, then that's not compassion. That's a contorted sense of compassion, in my opinion. To people who have no understanding of the possibility even of compassion, and who are declaring at every opportunity that they'll do it again. So there's a biblical passage. אם במחתרת יימצא הגנב והוקע ומת, אין לו דמים. If the thief comes in the middle of the night and there's a clear indication that he'll kill if you try to stop him, and you kill him first. Someone who comes to kill you, you kill him first. That's compassion. That's one aspect of compassion. It's not the only aspect of compassion. But sometimes it's an unfortunate, a very unfortunate part of life that we have to have a military. It's unfortunate that we have to spend money on tanks and planes and personnel carriers and missiles and guns and bullets and all that stuff. But if you think for one moment that you're going to be able to create a country of compassion, of compassionate people, and a national ethos that projects compassion without those warplanes and tanks and personnel carriers, well, good luck to you. You won't be able to do it because there's evil out there and there are people who want you otherwise. And all we're saying is, let us live in peace. The moment we live in peace, there'll be compassion for everyone. Let me tell you something, my friend. I spent a long time in Abu Dhabi before the war. I was doing think tank work. I sat with people who are Islamic theologians. I sat with political theorists. And I walked around the streets of Abu Dhabi with my kippah. And I felt more at home in Abu Dhabi than I do in most European cities for sure, but some American cities as well. I felt safer. We can go there. We can go there. We can go to a place of peace. I dealt for a period of my life with the issue of food insecurity, talking to us about hunger, talking to us about. We have all the solutions to food insecurity in a 5-mile radius of Tel Aviv. 90% of our industrial water is purified wastewater. It's the highest rate in the world. When I came to Israel in 1978, I came to the dormitory in the rabbinical seminary, and they said, look, you've got 90 seconds when you take a shower. I said, what do you mean? I came from Scranton, Pennsylvania. What do you mean 90 seconds to shower? They said, yeah, there's a gizmo on the shower head that shuts off after 90 seconds because we had a water crisis. We were a dry country. We had no water. We are now a net water exporter. That's a hell of a lot of compassion. People need water. We export water to Jordan. We export water into the Palestinian territories. We export water, a country that 30, 40 years ago didn't have its own water. That's one hell of a lot of compassion. And we can solve, together with our friends in the Gulf, around the world, we can solve food insecurity. There are 900 million people going to sleep every night with malnutrition. Most in Africa, but certainly in other places as well, such as the Far East and in South America. I spent 3 years studying malnutrition in Paraguay. I wanted to understand how is it that the 4th largest exporter of soybeans to China has 15% malnutrition. How can it be that children growing up next to soy fields have bloated bellies and sunken eyes and shortened arms? How could that be? Next to soy fields that are feeding Chinese. I said to the president, do me a favor, give me a car, give me a guard, let me go out there, I want to study it. All right? And I came to the conclusion that it can all be solved. And I know how to do it. I took the ideas back, and there's a whole bunch of political issues. We got beyond our political issues, we can show compassion. Tremendous compassion. Political Israel is Israel. We don't have a political problem. We'll do it everywhere and anywhere. Okay? I spent time in Liberia. You know what poverty is? Let me tell you something. Until you go to Liberia, I'm talking about people live on $2 a day. I'm talking about acute poverty. Okay? There are issues we can solve there. We can solve it. We can solve it together. We can show so much compassion because of what we've accomplished. I tell the Prime Minister all the time, stop calling us a startup nation. Call us a sustainable nation. We can export sustainability. We have all the potential. We have all the innovation. Okay? We are one of the leaders in innovation and startups in the world. Okay? We have it there. Really, in a 5, 6, 7 mile radius of Tel Aviv, the solutions to high-tech agriculture, to greenhouse technology, to water purification, to seeds that withstand the elements, okay, and which is a problem in so many different places. We have these solutions. Just come and live with us in peace and stop this battle over the civilizational battle. We're ready to do it, but we need partners to do it. Okay, we've gone into negotiations repeatedly, and we promised them a state in 1993. We stood on the White House lawn, everybody shook hands, and it was kuchimuchi kumbaya. And within 10 years, we had buses being blown up in Jerusalem. I was Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Education, 2001, 2004. You know what I dealt with? Children that were wetting their pants on the way to school because they were afraid of getting blown up. We had 161 children blown up on the way to school. With the same Arafat who we shook hands with on the White House lawn and who got a Nobel Peace Prize. So was it compassionate to give Arafat a Nobel Peace Prize? It was the most uncompassionate thing to do. Because if a murderer, if a terrorist is really penitent, let him show it. First, let him show his penitence. It doesn't happen like instant cocoa. Well, I killed people yesterday, but now I'm okay. Now accept me. Now, well, let's see. Let's give it time. And it didn't take a few weeks before he organized, and we brought him back. He organized in Ramallah and sent death squads out to plant buses on our school buses. So I'm with you, man. I'm with you. Wherever we can show compassion, show compassion. Lots of love. lots of ahava. But sometimes tough love is the only love that you really need to show. So thank you very much. It's great spending time with you. And please take me seriously. Thank you. Please take me seriously about extending invitations and letting me come and spend more time with you. Okay? So shalom.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Leiter. Can we give him another hand?